Oh, hey guys, it's me again. So, as everyone already knows, I'm a grown man-child. If you are new here and know nothing about me, well, I am 20 years old, and whenever I go to any type of store and see a figurine, I start shaking uncontrollably with excitement, because I can own that figurine, put it on a shelf in my room and let it collect dust, but convince myself that one day it will be a very valuable investment that will shoot up in price. But the thing is, even if it does shoot up in price, that doesn't even matter, because I wasn't planning on selling it in the first place, because it looks cool, and I like it. It's cool. It all started in elementary school with the basics. Pokemon cards, Bakugan, Beyblades, and then once I got to middle school, I started collecting shoes, video games, and the souls of my enemies. Collecting things has been ingrained in me for as long as I can remember, and I owe a large part of my love for buying and keeping random useless items to my childhood safe place, Toys R Us. Most of you should know what Toys R Us is, since YouTube claims that my audience consists of people from the ages of 18 to 24 years old, and a majority of people in that age range have had some kind of experience with Toys R Us. But if somehow you are lying to YouTube about your age, I hate to break it to you, but you're going to jail. Tell your parents that you're a little felon, huh? You're a little thug. However, if you are a child and have no clue what I am talking about right now, Toys R Us was a chain of toy stores that took over the world for almost 60 years. Children from multiple generations have gone to this store, and it provided happiness to millions around the world. But sadly, this chain of stores is no longer with us. Okay, well, actually, it kind of still is with us, but I'll talk about that more later. Toys R Us has had such a major impact on my life, and I constantly find myself thinking about the memories I made going to this store. So in today's video, I would like to take a look back at Toys R Us. Before we go down this path of nostalgia and a yearning to go back to my childhood, let's first talk about the very interesting history of Toys R Us. The story of how Toys R Us came to be is very interesting, since it wasn't always a toy store. It all began during the prehistoric times of 1948, when a man named Charles P. Lazarus started a store called Children's Bargain Town in Washington, D.C. This was a pretty simple baby furniture store. Lazarus had created it in order to take advantage of the post-World War II baby boom that was occurring in the United States, and his idea turned out to be really smart, since his business became fairly successful. However, after almost a decade of only selling baby furniture, Lazarus decided in 1957 that he wanted to expand a little bit. So he decided to open up his very first toy store in Rockville, Maryland. The toy store was an immediate success, and Lazarus decided to go all in with the branding and rename all his prior store locations to Toys R Us. Throughout the late 50s and most of the 60s, Toys R Us was able to make a proper name for itself, especially once advertising campaigns began with Geoffrey the Giraffe. Things looked amazing for the company, and in 1966, Toys R Us would be acquired by Interstate Department Stores, which was an American-based holding company that mainly controlled retailers. At first, being acquired came with a lot of benefits, since Toys R Us was aggressively attempting to expand across the country, but sadly, the holding company that took over Toys R Us was a bit over their heads and ran into bankruptcy issues in the late 70s. However, things were fixed when Mr. Lazarus swooped in and decided to take over the holding company that took over his company. That move was so Sigma Alpha Sigma edging mewing of Mr. Lazarus to do, and under his control, he changed the name of the company to the Toys R Us Corporation. location, and from that point onwards, there was no looking back. A majority of people from the ages 0 to 18 during the late 20th and early 21st century have been impacted by Toys R Us in some capacity. For example, your boy right here has done a lot of things in a Toys R Us. Okay, that makes it sound like I did something weird in a Toys R Us. I'd like to preface right now, I just shopped. I only shopped in the Toys R Us. I didn't do anything like a crime, or I'm a good person. If I'm being honest, I genuinely can't even remember the first time I ever went to a Toys R Us store, since I've been going to this place before I could even put together any thoughts in my head. Like, genuinely, I was being strolled around this place when my head was still deformed, because I was a baby. From the day I was born until all the flagship Toys R Us locations closed in 2018, my mom made it a routine to bring me to this store every weekend. This was by far my favorite childhood tradition, since my mom would work throughout the week and we didn't get an insane amount of time to spend with one another during these days. But no matter what, every weekend she would bring me to Toys R Us and let me go crazy. I wasn't even necessarily buying anything when I would go on these Toys R Us trips. At most, it was a small little Nerf gun or a pack of Pokemon cards. The reason I loved going, however, is because it just became an ingrained family tradition to go to Toys R Us and run around. And also, I really liked going in the store because it was like super colorful and I got an insane dopamine hit. It was kind of like as if I were to go to South America and consume some sort of a psychedelic toad serum, but the only difference is I'm 5 years old and I was in a Toys R Us.
Didn't, Walmart and Target have toy aisles? What made Toys R Us so special?
Well, yeah, you are correct, youtube.com/goodguyalex. Those toy aisles were also fantastic. I have so many memories going to my local Walmart, but you also have to put everything into perspective. These toy aisles were small and gray and not much to go writing home about, while Toys R Us was all well put together, colorful, and huge. So I guess you can say that size matters. Speaking of size, we cannot talk about Toys R Us memories without talking about my favorite Toys R Us location of all time. The Toys R Us in Times Square. If you aren't familiar with this specific Toys R Us, it was the biggest flagship store the company had during its prime, and it was a staple for all tourists visiting New York City. Fun fact, but growing up, I absolutely hated New York City. It was crowded, loud, smelly, stinky, and I was always in a tiny little apartment doing nothing. But occasionally, my family would make the trip over to Times Square and take me to the Toys R Us. Seeing that giant Toys R Us sign wrap around the store always sent shivers down my body. And then when you actually went into the place, it was bonkers. There were toys everywhere, a giant Lego section, dinosaurs, and oh yeah, a massive Ferris wheel in the middle of the store. Yeah, this place was crazy, but sadly in 2015 it would close down and be replaced with a Gap and Old Navy, which is really depressing. Another fond memory that I still think about as an adult are the birthday trips I would take to Toys R Us, since every year when it was my birthday, my mom would take me to this store and let me spend all of the gift cards and cash that I got on anything I wanted. Funny enough, the DSi XL that I still own to this day was bought from a Toys R Us on my birthday using all the money and gift cards that I was given that year by my relatives and friends. There was also this other crazy Toys R Us birthday memory I had back in kindergarten when I held a birthday party at Build-A-Bear Workshop. If you know, you know. This is another childhood classic. During my birthday party, one of my friends had actually gifted me a Lego Death Star. They had bought this Death Star from Toys R Us, and it was an insane gift to get at the time, since not only was it the Lego Death Star, which is massive and also an expensive set, but I was also 5 years old. I'm assuming you can all see where this story is going, but we ended up